So Wayne Rooney is on his way to Birmingham. How does this deal work out? And is Rooney even an upgrade on John Eustace? Let's talk about it. So according to the Times Sport, Rooney and Birmingham have agreed a deal with a salary that is 3 times the amount Eustace was earning, and the club are hoping to confirm Rooney's appointment in the coming days. Now, it's been widely reported that Birmingham's new American owners were looking for that Stardust name, and they've certainly got that with Wayne Rooney. We've already seen all the media attention that this story's gathering, and ultimately having Wayne Rooney in your dugout is going to bring a lot of eyeballs to your club, both from the States, obviously, where he was recently managing DC United, and from the global audience. Wayne Rooney is an absolutely huge name in football, and so commercially you can see why a decision maybe has been made to bring Rooney in. But from a footballing perspective, does this one make sense? How does Rooney's managerial career stack up to Eustace? That's what we'll be diving into in today's video. I'd also like to get some of your guys' verdicts on this one in the comments down below as well. So Rooney's managerial career started with Derby all the way back in 2019 when he signed for the then Championship club. He joined them as a player coach. Did have a few standout moments in the Derby shirt, scored a few nice free kicks, but you could see from then that Rooney was clearly looking to go into management, as he'd also joined Derby in a coaching capacity. And in his second season with the club, when Philip Cocu eventually lost his job, Rooney was then given the role as a player manager. He quickly then withdrew himself from the playing squad and ultimately ended up retiring when he was given the full job as Derby's manager. Now, when Rooney was given the Derby job, he did take over a side that was bottom of the Championship. They'd not had a good start to that season whatsoever, and initially he did get a bounce out of that group. He got them to as high as 18th in the Championship after a fairly consistent run of results. However, Derby saw a drastic tail-off in form towards the end of that season under Rooney, and in the end they were really fortunate not to be relegated. So just for context, Derby weren't working with any point deductions this season, but they only won one of their last 14 Championship matches. They survived after a dramatic 3-3 draw with Sheffield Wednesday on the final day, and ultimately Wednesday were relegated as they were the team working with the point deduction that season. Now, the following season, Rooney was given a pretty impossible task at Derby because they were hit with a 12-point deduction straight away, and they were then handed a further 9-point deduction, meaning they would be working with a 21-point deduction, and their squad was largely made up of free transfers and youngsters, and no one really gave them much of a hope. But Rooney, to his credit, did get a tune out of that side, and actually they played some relatively decent football along the way. In the end, they picked up 55 points that season, but because of the massive point deduction, they finished 23rd with just 34 points to their name. But had they not had that deduction, Derby would have stayed up comfortably. As the ownership issue at Derby then struggled to sort itself out over the summer, Rooney eventually stepped aside. Liam Rosenior, who was working as Rooney's number 2, then stepped in as the Derby number 1, and Rooney then went off to America. But that's a quick summary of Rooney's time in English football so far, and there were a few interesting things that we certainly learnt about him as a coach during his time at Derby. It is worth mentioning that during his time at Derby, he had a great team around him, most notably Liam Rosenior, and we've already seen how Rosenior's gone on to do in management himself. He's doing a cracking job with Hull City at the moment, so it remains to be seen how Rooney will fare back in the Championship, but without his right-hand man this time. What I thought would be interesting to do was to make a direct comparison between Eustace and Rooney and the underlying stats within both of their sides. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've taken Birmingham's underlying numbers from this season so far under John Eustace. I've taken Derby County's stats from the 21/22 season when they were managed by Wayne Rooney to see how they rank up against each other. Now, obviously we're using different sample sizes to stack these two managers up against each other, and both teams had squads of varying degrees of quality, so do take these numbers with a pinch of salt, but I do think it's interesting. There is the idea that the new ownership at Birmingham wants to bring in a more front-facing, attacking style of football. Some of the numbers actually back up Eustace here. So from a shots perspective, Birmingham under Eustace have been averaging 12.5, whereas Derby under Rooney were averaging just 10.1. Once again, it is important to take into consideration some of the context with both of those sides. Obviously, Rooney was working with really one hand tied behind his back with the point deduction and the quality available he had at Derby, but interesting nonetheless that Eustace just edges it here. From an XG perspective, it's also Eustace who has the edge. His Birmingham side have averaged an XG of 1.35 per 90, whereas Derby under Rooney were averaging an XG of just 1. Goals, again, it's Eustace who has the edge, with his Birmingham side averaging 1.0 3.6 goals per game, whereas Rooney at Derby, he was averaging less than a goal per game. However, it is in the possession stats that we do see quite a significant difference between both sides here. With Birmingham under Eustace, they've never really been all too interested in dominating the ball, sort of playing out from the back and having that style, whereas that is the sort of philosophy that Rooney tried to install in at Derby. As we can see here, Derby averaging 51.2% of the ball under Rooney, despite the fact that in a lot of the games they played, they were the underdog, but Rooney was looking to have that little bit more possession on the ball. So that's maybe something we can expect Rooney to change quite quickly in getting the Birmingham job, as he will look to have that side on the ball a little bit more, and perhaps a little bit more from playing out from the back. Long balls per 90, both really quite similar in this aspect. Birmingham playing slightly more long balls under Eustace than Derby were under Rooney, but very close in those numbers. And then the pass accuracy also fairly similar between both managers. Rooney slightly has the edge here with a bit more of an onus on possession, so that would be expected, with Eustace sides playing slightly more long. I think what we can see there is an interesting comparison between both managers, Eustace in the Birmingham job and Rooney at Derby, and how their records really are quite similar. In a lot of aspects, it is Eustace who actually has the edge here. Now, yes, you can argue that Eustace has been working with a better group of players at Birmingham than Rooney was at Derby, but with how close a lot of those statistics are, I really don't think there's all too much between these two people as football managers. I think that if you're going for what level they're both on, for me, I'd say they're both fairly similar. And that then begs the question for me, why would Birmingham go ahead and make this decision when they're currently sat 6th in the Championship? Obviously, it could be a case of history repeating itself. We saw the previous Birmingham ownership doing this all those years ago when they sacked Gary Rowett when Blues were in a very similar position for Gianfranco Zola, and that turned out to be an absolute disaster for the club. I think I've seen a lot of people say on Twitter they could understand the new ownership wanting to bring in their own man and, you know, putting Eustace to one side if the manager they were bringing in was a clear and obvious upgrade on Eustace from a footballing perspective. I don't think Rooney is quite that, and for that reason, I'm not sure this calculated gamble is quite worth the risk from a footballing perspective. However, when you consider the off-the-field implications, and I clearly think that's why this decision has been made to bring Rooney in, suddenly maybe you can see a bit more sense to it. So what is the state of play that Rooney is inheriting in at Birmingham when he will be joining the club? Well, he'll join a club who is currently sitting 6th in the Championship and in a good spot right now to kick on. A lot of us spoke very highly of Birmingham over the summer and how active they were in the transfer window. I think they ended up having one of the best transfer windows of any Championship club with the business that they got done. It's a team with a lot of moving parts at the moment, a lot of new players, several of which who have hit the ground running. But it is worth noting, while Birmingham are 6th in the Championship right now, the table is still incredibly close at this stage of the season. We're only 11 games in and Birmingham are only 3 points off Millwall, who are currently in 15th. So momentum swings, form can quickly flip a team season like that, especially in this early stage. And let me tell you, Rooney does not have an easy start to life at Birmingham, going off their fixtures for the month of October heading into November. His first 5 games as Birmingham manager in particular do look really challenging, and if he manages to come out of that group of games with a reasonable amount of points, then fair enough, because those first 5 matches see them going up against a Middlesbrough side who have been rejuvenated recently with the run they've put together under Carrick, a Hull side who have been very solid under Liam Rossini, and that'll be interesting to see the Master go up against the Apprentice in that match. Southampton, who have found a bit of form recently, and then they've got games against Ipswich and Sunderland, who are both in the top 6 right now. Looking at those first 5 matches, there's really no hiding space that Rooney can go into, and as he's inheriting a club that has been on the up recently because they won their last 2 matches under Eustace, maybe it does set him up for a little bit of failure early on because of that tough run in. But Blues fans, I'm really interested to get your opinions on this one in the comments down below. It's obviously a massive calculated risk that the owners are taking here. We've discussed some of the benefits of why they've perhaps gone ahead and done this, but some of the massive risks that come along with that. From Eustace's perspective, I certainly don't think he'll be out of work for long. I think that once the Championship managerial merry-go-round starts to really swing into action and some Championship clubs near the bottom of the table do start to part ways with their managers, I think that Eustace will be the top candidate for a lot of those clubs and what they're looking for. And then for Wayne Rooney coming in, how much faith do you put in Rooney right now? Obviously, it would be interesting to get some Derby fans' perspectives on Rooney in the comments down below as well, and what you made of him during his time at Derby and how he sort of managed a quite tough situation at the club. There's a lot of spinning plates with this one, and just in general at Birmingham City, there's just never a dull day at that football club, is there? But guys, there we have it. I will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Like I said before, I do welcome your thoughts in the comments down below. This sort of subject is always going to get people talking. Apart from that though, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in the next one.